There we are, y'all. We're live. This is perfect. So Technology Tuesday is continuing to go as planned. We're waiting on David from the city of Mesquite. He should join us. He'll come in hot here in a minute. But go in the chat room, say hello, ask your questions there. I'm going to pop some stuff in the offer section so you can see these guys on LinkedIn. But I'm going to back away now, turn this over to Scott, and let him moderate this panel. Thanks, everyone. George or Mike, can you hear Scott? Okay, so Scott, just pop out and pop back in again. I just felt like this was going to happen one more time, right? You can't hear me. We can't hear you. I'm going to just type in here. So why don't we do quick introductions? Michael, George, since you're good to go, George, give us an introduction of who you are, where you're at, and what's going on. And I'll get Scott hooked up here.
Yeah, you bet. George Curry, JLL Commercial Real Estate here in Fort Worth, Texas. Been in commercial real estate since 1998. So I've been through, I guess this is my third downturn, so to speak. Started out with Trammell Crow Company in Great Southwest. Joined Staubach Company here in 2002 in Fort Worth, and been with Staubach/JLL since 2002. Run our industrial group here in Fort Worth.
So what's occupying your time today on a typical Tuesday? What are the hot items?
You know, got some tenants we're trying to find good homes for, and also got a couple of new industrial projects, developments that we're working to line up with developers.
Look forward to hearing you speak.
Bring them to the market here.
I just heard Katie's voice.
Yeah,
somebody's feeding back.
Scott Rorman's here. And there's Dave Witcher.
Hey, everybody.
Well, we couldn't hear you guys for a while. We went out of the room and came back in. I think we're back. My name is Scott Rorman with 42 Real Estate. Welcome, everybody. Our topic is working with local governments to build lasting products. We are really excited to have George Curry with JLL on the line with us, along with Michael Talley with Denton Economic Development and David Witcher with the City of Mesquite Economic Development. George, would you be willing to give us just a little quick bio on yourself, and then we'll go to Michael?
Yeah, actually, I just gave it. I'm happy to give it again if you'd like. Did everyone else hear me or no?
I think a lot of people did hear you, yeah. So George is just the king of industrial in Dallas-Fort Worth. How about that for everybody who couldn't hear?
I'll say Fort Worth. I'll say Fort Worth. How about that?
Okay. All right, there you go, the king of Fort Worth real estate. All right, Michael, how about you?
Michael Talley, Director of Economic Development for Denton County. So we handle basically North Fort Worth, Alliance Airport area, all the way up to Sanger, all the way over to Prosper, Salina, down to Carrollton, Plano. So our claim to fame lately has been Charles Schwab headquarters in just barely the south side of the county in Westlake, and then of course the PGA headquarters in the west side of Frisco, and then of course Alliance is blowing and going. So we're working a lot there, and this morning I'm coming live from the laundry room, which is closest to the router.
Well, we like your artwork a lot. David, would you give us
just did that.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Witcher. I'm the Director of Economic Development here in Mesquite, Texas. I'm kind of the main contact as far as the city for industrial and commercial development. Right now, we're just seeing a lot of projects coming forward. We don't have one main project. I guess our biggest one was several years ago with Ashley Furniture, but we're seeing a lot of different things. We work with SLJ and Prologis and Urban Park 30 and Connor and Dolphin. You know, there's just a lot of things on the ground, and you know, this is really a strong time for us. Mesquite's a little different because we're a first-tier suburb, so part of us is in Fort Worth or in Dallas County, and the other part is out in Kaufman County. So we're seeing the finalization of development within our city, the core part here in Dallas County, and then we have new opportunities in Kaufman County.
Thanks, David. George, if you would start us off with just some, where have we been, where are we going in terms of real estate and in the industrial world, and then how that's looking with the cities.
Yeah, you bet. I'm gonna hold up a couple of charts that I had our research put together, but I thought this would be interesting for the group to see. We've heard on the previous panels, how Dallas Fort Worth has really done well, not only through this pandemic, but over the last multiple decades. For all as we, but I'll tell you this: a total vacancy of Dallas for the past 20 years. You can see that. You can tell on the one hand over here. You started here in 2000. After the recession of 2000, the vacancy rate climbed to 11.8%. Then it started to dip down to 7.8%. And then after the big recession in 2008, 2009, it went up to 12%, which is a very, very high number for this market. Well, after that, it continued to creep down, and creeping back a little bit up. With that, because there's been so much development, and speaking of development, it gives you kind of a flavor of the development in the last 20 years. This is from the right of the screen, that's the year 2000, dipped down, started to climb back up in 06, 07, 08, and then just fell off a cliff after 09. It really was very scary on that. But over the last 7 to 8 years, you can see it's incredibly high. It's been averaging over, per feet per year in that time frame over the last 5 to 6 years, which is really, really good. I found it interesting. I won't bore you with too many charts, but I found these interesting. On the chart here, what we see the biggest distribution markets in the United States: Chicago, Los Angeles, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, DFW. You can see that we're the largest distribution market in the United States. We flex and manufacturing, we're the largest market in the United States. I found these very interesting. The market here for underdevelopment, quarter Dallas, number 4. Click the next chart. And this just kind of gives the strength of where we're at. Net absorption, Dallas is number 1. And then finally, as far as year, we're beating Chicago, we're beating Houston, we're beating Inland Empire. Dallas Fort Worth is just down on the national goal. And from a start, this shows top 10 markets for new developments, absorption at the top, and then completion at the bottom. The red line here, that's Dallas Fort Worth. The only one that also has broken 100 million square feet, or right at 100 million, is the Inland Empire. This is the last 5 years for net absorption and new deliveries. Dallas Fort Worth has been number 1. That's where we begin. So it's easy to point to the statistics and say, look, Dallas Fort Worth is one of the strongest industrial markets right in the middle of the country, and that from the previous said from today, a tremendous amount of companies have moved from California, some from Illinois, some from New York, New Jersey, but from Sweden, from the Californians that are today. So with that, that's what we've from, where we're going. I'll echo what a lot of the earlier panelists said, that we anticipate more growth. We don't see any slowdown. Dallas Fort Worth, when we moved to Texas 25 years ago, 7 million people in the metro area. Right now, we're at 7.5 million. Never expecting in 10 to 12 years, we'll be at 15 million. 9 million people.
So,
people going to need?
George, let me break in just a second, George. We are having some audio difficulty on your end. Michael, are you there? Michael Talley? Michael, are you there? Well, we've got Technology Tuesday going again here.
Yeah, it's awesome.
David, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. George, we want to come back to you. The part that I did get was pretty daggum interesting, so we'd like to come back to maybe when we get the audio working. David, if you would give us just a little bit on what the city of Mesquite is seeing in terms of new industrial parks coming into the area.
You know, we're seeing industrial parks kind of come on two different levels. One is just infill sites related to what we have remaining in our Skyline Business Park, which is our traditional business park that started maybe in the 70s or 80s by the Hunts. And so those sites are just about finished out. We have maybe a few left, and those are, deals are working on those. And so with those, we're looking at the infrastructure and other things that may need to, make sure that those sites are, current and usable for the development community. The other side of this is that we're working with developers on larger sites that have never been developed. We have one or two here in Dallas County. We have some out by our airport off of I-20, and those are kind of moving forward. The biggest thing is infrastructure. We have to have the water, sewer, fiber, the power, all the utilities to make the site work. Without that, it's not a usable site. And then if we move out to Kaufman County and Mesquite on I-20, those are kind of new greenfield sites. So, for example, the city is running a 36-inch water line with a pump station, and that's going to be finished this next summer. And so we're going to have the water utilities available out there, because previously it's been farmland, in some families for over a century. So we're trying to kind of plan for the future. And that's been the biggest push right now with our community when we meet with developers or end users, is to make sure that we are keeping up and we're staying with the market.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Dave, I don't see Michael on the line. George, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now we can hear you a lot better. So maybe kicking Michael off helped. I hope he comes back on. George, I had a follow-up with you. What types of parks are attracting the most attention, and what kind of product mix do you think is getting the most attention?
Yeah, so the parks that have services, like the gentleman was just saying, that the parks that already have the infrastructure in place, the water and the sewer, most important.
George, you're breaking up again. I think on mine, the video is turned off now. If you don't mind turning off the video while you're talking, and maybe that'll help give us more bandwidth there.
Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you. It's breaking up a little bit, but we want to hear what you say enough. We'll work through it. Go ahead and.
Hey, what I would do, George, real quick, I would just log out, bump out, and bump back in. I bet you that'll fix that connection.
Okay.
I bet something on your computer is getting in your way.
I'll log out real quick.
Yeah, close out anything else you have on too. So if you have your email on or anything like that, close it out. That should help.
You got it. I'll be right back.
Okay. So David, you're our resident expert here. What types of strategies is the city of Mesquite using to work with industrial developers and industrial tenants in terms of things that the city can provide and help incentivize people?
One of the first things we see is that, especially for the remaining sites that we have, is infrastructure. So we try to identify the things that the site might need as far as, utilities or roadways and other things. And in some cases, I think the group earlier was talking about impact fees, and we look to try to, mitigate those, or depending on the site, the size of the site, mitigate those, or, work on the 380 development agreement. The second level, as we always hear, is probably on incentives as far as what can you bring? How are you gonna make this, for our client usable? We've seen a lot. Mesquite has triple Freeport, so we've seen a lot of interest in manufacturing or bringing manufacturing back here to the U.S. And for the last 2 years, it's really been a positive. We have triple Freeport here in Mesquite with the city, county, and school district. It's statutory, so it's already on the books. And for companies that have, manufacturing or a widget that they ship out of the state within 180 days, they can claim it on their property taxes, and some are utilizing that to 75, 80, 85%. I think the third area that I see right now is labor force. Mesquite's very lucky that we are a regional draw. We have a strong labor force here in our community, but also we draw from East Texas and North and South, and with that we have a BRE or Business Retention Task Force. So as companies come in and when they have information about our labor market, we reach out to those or companies that are setting up shop here in Mesquite. We're doing traditionally we had done job fairs, but with COVID we're now in the process of doing virtual ones, and so those have been very successful. But those are some of the areas that we kind of tie in. The other thing too is that we're in a time of hurry up, I need to get this done, and so we try to keep in parallel with the fast time pace that we have for development. The other thing that we do is we've had people that have had projects moving forward, and they said, are you going to shut down? Is the city going to, are you're going to delay our projects? And so we've worked with them as far as inspections and as far as different departments to make sure as they're doing, slab work or doing panels or, fire inspection, that we are not delaying those projects. So we're like anybody else. We are adjusting, and because of the large amount of warehouse distribution we have here, we've shifted internally city resources to match the needs that we see forthcoming.
Dave, I think that's really good comments. We have worked with you in the city of Mesquite, as you know, and on a project on the old Big Town Mall site, and Mesquite was really easy to work with, and we appreciate everything. In fact, we have another 216-acre project we're working with you at the Mesquite Airport, so I can vouch for everything you just said. Michael, we missed you for a minute. Would you be willing to give us what kind of incentives that people in your community, the cities in your community, are willing to give for projects?
Sure. Yeah. Like David mentioned, triple Freeport is super important. I think just making sure that every company can get as many breaks as possible to make a project work. Foreign trade zone, we've seen a lot of action there, especially at Alliance Airport and across the southern part of the county, also all the over to Carrollton as well. We offer abatements at the county. I know the 380s and 381s for all the developers out there. So a lot of communities that used to participate in the 380s and the 381s at the county levels, the laws change at the state to where your property tax caps can't be raised like they used to be. So I know a lot of communities, and David can speak from the city level, but from the county level, we've looked at that as an issue, and on paper it looks like we're receiving that money, but then we're actually writing a check out to the developer or whoever it may be, the company that's coming in. But the abatements is our strong point right now. The foreign trade zones is I think a big play. I know Alliance and Hillwood, the Pro group down there, that's very important to any company coming in. And then one of the things our county does, and I know a lot of counties can't do this because they're just not financially stable enough to do it, is we can do some money up front for infrastructure. A great example, this is an industrial, but the PGA headquarters that's going in the west side of Frisco, rather than do an incentive on an abatement or a 381, the county was able to give about $4 million to the city for road infrastructure because they know the long-term play in that economic development project. So, that's going to be a $10 to $12 billion project over the next 20 years. So they get that, hey, a little up front when it comes to roads and other infrastructure is way more important. Another great example of what the county did in the last downturn in the economy was they went out for bonds and put money into infrastructure. So if you see what's going on with 35W and 35E going down to Dallas, that's very important. And as we all know, if you don't have the infrastructure to a site, it doesn't matter how much you give somebody. You've got to have the roads, the water, the sewer, the gas, whatever the company needs to make it happen.
Thank you, Michael. It's really fun to hear that counties and cities are all working together. I think that's really a great thing in this market. George, are you back with us? We'd love to hear a little bit more on product mix, if you don't mind.
I'm back. Can you hear me okay?
I think we're good now, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I will tell you that the parks that have most clients, you know, Worth, we talked about Railhead, and
George, we're breaking up again. Let's see. Let's try it one more time. We really want to hear what you have to say, so let's try it again. And if it's not working, we'll just have to punt for a little while.
I mean, yeah, I was just talking about clients and support. Can you hear me? Or is it?
Yeah, we're not getting much, George. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, my apologies. I don't know what the problem is.
We're gonna work on getting you some city incentives for bandwidth, because I didn't mean that rudely if that came across that way.
No, it's all good.
Michael and Dave, are you finding that you're able to move projects along in the face of opposition, or are you not having very much opposition in terms of putting these projects in? What's the constituency like out there?
Michael, you want to go first? Or?
Sure, yeah. Well, ours is a little more dynamic because we have over 40 communities we work with. So one thing we like to do, and I do personally when I came on board a year and a half ago with the county, was really go to each city and town and hey, see what they want to be. I mean, do you want to be industrial? Do you want to be a bedroom community? And so you really get a gauge on what they want from there. The companies that, or I'm sorry, the communities that do want industrial, they still would like to pick and choose what they want. You know, we're going to get a ton of warehouse distribution because logistically it just makes sense for companies to be in DFW. And but from Alliance up to Denton down to, you know, Louisville, Flower Mountain, Carrollton, you know, you can get to Dallas and Fort Worth in that corridor across 121. So it just makes sense for them to be there. As far as, you know, a council, like I said, it depends on what they want to be, but it also depends on who's on board. I think if we had a meeting just recently on a potential project in one of our communities, and council has kind of been hesitant to move forward on it, but we said, hey, let's sit down at the table and see how the county can be a partner with you. And the school district was also on board with the project. So that really puts council, I think, a little more at ease, you know, when they're saying, hey, you know, we don't want to be alone in this. So I think it's not really hand-holding, I would say, but it's saying, hey, you have the backup. We're here to help you out when it comes to infrastructure, or however we can, you know, maybe it's a TIF or something like that we can participate in. Really, if you turn it to where you're saying, hey, council, we're giving you an opportunity to have a say in what's going on this property or in this community, I think you kind of change the dynamic of how they look at it.
So are you or are any cities in your area providing any incentives for speculative buildings, or is it only for leased pre-leased buildings?
They have. I mean, like I said, it depends on what they want. I know the town of Northlake has worked with Hillwood to try to get some spec there, and that's really accelerated all of the development there. I know Hillwood was planning on doing spec over the next few years there, and they're almost built out on that Northlake property that they acquired. And they were able to work with them on a 380 agreement to get that spec in. I think for a lot of communities, it's really smart to do that, to really get an industrial park going. Just from the communities that we have that put up spec, it gets people's foot in the door, and maybe they don't necessarily land there in that building, but maybe they build within that industrial park, or they land in a community next door. So there are a few communities that do that, but as everyone knows, that tends to change with new elections coming up. So we'll see how that plays out with the elections here in November.
Well, I think you're going to be pretty busy for a while, because I've heard of 5 deals in the city of Denton that are popping right now. So you guys are really hopping. Dave, how about you? Any incentives for spec buildings, or any opposition from constituents? Are you seeing an easy street there?
There's no easy street in municipal government, or I haven't seen that streetcar yet. I will say that it's nice when you can do projects in the industrial area when the zoning's in place, the the distance to residential areas are such that you're not going to impact them. I think part of the message too is, depending on the project, working with the developer, kind of crafting the vision, work internally with the city staff and city manager's office, outreaching the council so they know what's going on. I think it's imperative that on that level, or if you have sites that have to be rezoned, to do the same thing, but also reach out to the community. You have to have that discussion. I think I think it's good to explain what the development will be and what it won't be. There are always impacts and things, but I've learned that people will talk and kind of work through stuff. Most of the projects we have here have been, for the most part, gone pretty well because of the nature. We have warehouse distribution buildings. There's always exceptions for any kind of manufacturing or something with emissions and things. And so I think those, you really have to take the extra step, and especially if you have to get permits in Austin and that flows back to your community. I will say, though, as far as the city, we always try to take a long-term perspective, because kind of real estate is really a long-term, proposition. We are seeing, a lot of the projects we have coming in are spec. And so we realize that, and we've been actually incentivized to get that development to create the market. If you looked at Mesquite maybe 3 years ago when I started here, I had no new generation building sites going on, and we've been lucky to work with a lot of good developers, and we probably have maybe 6 or 7. We have over 3 million square feet under construction right now, and probably can add another couple of million. So that's been good. As far as the incentives, we're like anybody else. We're trying to development costs money, and it costs cities. In my city, in our case, we're actually a general fund city, so because of COVID, and if you look at retail sales and property taxes and different fees, we're running a $3 million deficit. And so we've tried to craft a plan to be a good neighbor and work with the developers. We've already opened our checkbook to make that first round happen. We've created a marketplace. So I think, as far as a council perspective, councils approved 380 agreements and county commissioners approved 381s. And so those people in a down economy it's not the same world. Our world has changed, and I think you're seeing that reflected. That doesn't mean that, you can't give incentives. You just have to work a lot harder at this, I think, to make it happen. Or they're really going to have to make sense for the project to come into the community, and you're going to have to check all the boxes, and that's just part of it.
Oh, that's great. That's great, David. It's fun to hear the cities are being so active and so willing to help. George, let's try you one more time, man.
I moved, so can you hear me any better now?
Well, we always can hear your first statement. Let's try your second one. But yes, we could hear the first one really well.
Okay. Well, I moved locations in my office, so maybe that'll help.
It's not perfect, but we are willing to live with that. So let's try product mix one more time. What are you seeing out there on product mix?
Large distribution centers. So it's literally 400,000 square feet and above in a lot of areas of Alliance and South Fort Worth. And even in Dallas, we're seeing the big boxes that really rule the Metroplex. So that's what we're seeing. The majority of this 5 million square feet is going to get built here. Probably 15 to 20 million square feet is going to be 400,000 and above.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Fort Worth and Tarrant County have had a lot of announcements here lately as well on new projects coming. So are you seeing that there's a pretty broad, evenly spacing for cross dock versus rear load versus front load, or is it one product of those types specifically?
Good question. The answer is if it's a larger building, and I'll say 300,000 square feet and above, almost always. And if it's less than 300, you'll see it maybe cross dock and rear load and some front load. But yeah, once you cross 300,000 to 400,000 square feet, you're almost always.
Did you say it broke up? Did you say once you cross 300,000 feet, it's almost always a cross dock?
That's correct. Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is interesting, in the past, we've seen a lot of the ratio of building to land of, in the 28 to 33% coverage. And now I think there might be a movement to see less coverage and going all the way down to even, I've seen some projects as low as 18% coverage of building to land just due to all the parking and the trucking. What are you seeing there, George?
Again, if it's a bigger box, they're trying to get as much coverage as possible, even up to 35 or 40% on a 5, 6, 700,000 bomber. If it's 100,000 square feet, you're right, it might be at 25% and 30%.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for your comments there. Other funding strategies, Michael, have you seen other creative ideas that developers, cities, county is doing other than the 380s, or are there some things that are creative out there that we should be looking at?
Yeah, if people really want to see what communities and counties are doing, really look at public-private partnerships. I think one of the big ones is getting spec going in your community. If you can partner with a developer on tax breaks, or having the EDC or city put money up front to get an industrial park kind of up and running, I think that's one of the most important things you can do. A lot of the incentives come on the back end. So it's okay, prove to me that you're bringing the jobs, prove to me that you're putting the capital investment in, and then you'll get that abatement, or you'll get those incentives, those sales tax or the property taxes rebated back to you. And then we have skills development fund. I know David was talking about workforce earlier. We can give you all the incentives in the world, but if you don't have the workforce there to fill those jobs for your company, it's not going to matter. So we really look at that as well. So what can your community colleges do in your communities? What can the state do? So skills development fund money, we work closely with workforce to see how we can get you money kind of per job, either for training or just as what the state uses as a tool. So enterprise fund is a big tool that if a community is, or basically if the state is in competition with another state, the governor's office will step up and help that company with basically a number of funds per job set up. So that's usually 75 jobs, over 75 jobs in the urban area, and then over 25 jobs in the rural area. And then it's based on usually 25% in the enterprise zone of those jobs have to be over what the county average wage is. So there's some different tools you can use there. As far as upfront funds, though, I know a lot of developers want to know about that. And that's really just if you want to partner with a community or an EDC that has some funds sitting around that really they want to be more aggressive and more active, that's really the key to look at.
All right. David, any comments there?
Some things we've used are very traditional. We have TERS districts or tax increment finance districts that when we have projects that come in there, we have monies available to do some infrastructure and roadway. And so that's always a good thing. In one or two cases, we've actually created those districts to kind of help out with the development of a site, especially if it's raw land and it's just been farmland. And you have to look at the roads and the water, sewer, and the utilities. And so that's been a good tool. I think what Michael was saying earlier is that some cities have 4A or 4B money. We don't have it here in Mesquite, but I think from a community or developer perspective, those are always funds available that they can, advance monies, or they can do a no interest loan depending on the type of development. And that works out, especially for, all the real growth that we're seeing in different parts of the Metroplex. If this is all kind of new frontier development, those are really good resources. I think part of what you want to do from a developer and city perspective is really talk about what some capabilities are, and then also understand that not everybody can pay for everything. Everybody, cash is good, but keep things realistic. I think it's another strong suit. I think some areas have used industrial revenue bonds. Those are kind of old school for Texas, but I've noticed that those are coming online. And then obviously you have state and federal specialty zones and stuff that may allow some money, and there's a lot of different tools. And so, you just really have to kind of dig and try to create success.
Well, it sounds, I know, Dave, from your standpoint, since we've worked together, and it sounds like Michael's the same, you guys are also helping out developers figure out which ones to go to, because frankly, just the number of terms and labels and names that y'all have thrown out on this call today is pretty mind-boggling. I'm not sure I could do your job. So thanks for all you're doing. I think George has dropped off. We were going to come back to him with one more question, but since George isn't on right now, and hopefully he'll come back, Dallas has a lot, for a lot of its history, our area has seen speculative development. So a lot of companies and a lot of people are used to looking for a project that we need the space in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and sometimes development projects are taking 12 to 18 months or even longer if zoning's. Can you speak to speed to market from a ground up development and what you're seeing in your areas?
In our case here in Mesquite, we're kind of entering a really wonderful spot because we're going to have a lot of new buildings come online here in 2020, 2021. And so, marketing activity is way down. We're seeing a lot more just regional activity, but we're able to show buildings that are going to be online. Like everybody else, people really like to see the building, pretty much complete. They can pick out the final elements of it. But I think that's a big thing that we're seeing now that traditionally you haven't seen, because usually buildings are built spec and everybody had to come to an agreement, and it was 12, 18 months out. And so that's the one, I think, wonderful thing about this market. That being said, I think maybe into 2021, we're going to have a lot of vacant space. And so I guess that's going to create some interesting times. And I think as we see more tours, maybe from California and out of state, back into our market, I think that'll be a huge push in our sales, because I think Texas is the number one or number two destination as far as warehouse distribution, and so those end users are looking to set up shop. And I think across the board we're going to really see a renaissance here in the Metroplex.
So if somebody, that's great information. If somebody said we would really rather have a build-a-suit, but we need to go quickly. There's enough time maybe, but if we go to the city of Mesquite, what's the approval process like? What's the, what's it like to go ahead and get everything lined up so that we can start development? Or do we just need to punt that and go lease a building that's already leased, but even though we would prefer to have it built specifically for us? What's the process there, the timing?
Well, as far as state law, the state law has changed as far as the cities working on the submission on the platting and the project. We have 30 days now to get that complete and get it to start the P&Z. If there's issues with that, we can kick it back. So that's changed across the board for all cities. And so we call it the shot clock if you want to. So because of that's changed how some cities operate. Maybe they were slower. in our case, we've always been very adept and move quickly. I think that process can take maybe 90 to 120 days to where you actually have the zoning and a lot of things worked out with the site. You know, like anything though, you always have exterior things like Plomar and Lomar or floodplain issues or utilities or whatever it might be that take a little more time. But I think that with the knowledge base, at least here in Mesquite, of all the industrial projects, we're a lot better at what we do. And I think that also gets out to the general market. Most cities are very, very quick to respond. And if it's a spec building, they know what they need to do. They can move them through the municipal side and also work with the developers to, you know, kind of problem solve and, you know, get the project going. Like anything though, you still have a pretty solid build cycle, but, you know, I think everything has been, you know, moved up, and so if it's new construction you're looking at, you know, we're very quick here in our community.
Well, I can tell you that you guys are quicker than most, that's for sure. Michael, we have a question on the screen about opportunity zones. Are there any opportunity zones in your area of influence?
We only actually have 3 opportunity zones in Denton County. There's 1 in Denton and 2 in the city of Louisville. And I think a lot of communities are, it's kind of aggravating to some communities how the states were given the authority to choose the opportunity zones. And then you know, you hear it on both sides, but we only have 3, unfortunately, in the county. So I know the city of Louisville has worked on a few things there, but we don't have a ton to work with right now.
Okay, so talk about a little bit on timing, like I asked Dave, and you have multiple municipalities. I know the county can't direct them, but are you seeing the timing being worked on, or are you seeing the timing really being drug out for new buildings?
Yeah, so the timing's, I mean, obviously extremely important to any company. We had a site visit just a couple weeks ago, and of course we were in all the meetings that were across the communities, and of course one in particular was a spec building almost ready to roll, and then one was a build to suit, and they were a little bit further ahead than, you know, just a traditional greenfield. So I think they were 9 months from making something happen if whatever they wanted to build. But the company really just said, hey, you know, we're going to take that into account and say, oh, can we get in this building 9 or 12 months before that other building and have that revenue coming in? Now, that's not going to be the case for every single business or every company coming in, because they may want something that's so specific to their needs that you've got to build it. Yeah, they're absolutely going to continue looking at that, because that's more money in their pocket. And then obviously the leasing or the owning, you know, there's a little bit more competitiveness. I think there's some more competitors coming into the alliance market. So Hillwood, who was traditionally really the only one developing that, there's some other developers that have come in to the north of them and started acquiring property and building out specs. So competition is good for everyone, in my opinion. But the companies are going to look at what's available and their timelines, because they want to get to market as soon as possible in that region.
Right. George, welcome back.
Can you hear me now?
Let's try it.
Can you hear me okay or not?
We're hearing you good right this minute.
Okay. I think I found out that the culprit, I just put my computer down and rebooted, and it's working out better.
Well, it's still breaking up some, but are you seeing any opportunity zones? Industrial may or may not be working so good in opportunity zones. Are you seeing anything in opportunity zones in your Tarrant County?
We haven't. We've got a couple of areas, but it's mostly built out, and so we haven't seen any industrial target areas.
All right. Well, Michael, what do you tell people when they're coming to town? What do you tell them? What's your elevator pitch for Denton County?
Sure. Well, like I mentioned earlier, our communities are all different. So it depends on what you want when a company's coming to town. Do you want the small town feel? Do you want the horse ranches in Pilot Point, or do you want the industrial in Alliance, or do you want the sports capital of the world in Frisco? And then the county, a lot of counties don't have an economic development director, so they don't have someone to handle that. But Commissioner's Court and Judge Eads up in Denton County, they really wanted to make an effort to be more aggressive and go after the regional HQs and the HQs that are looking elsewhere. And of course, we're getting, I would say, about almost half of our projects right now seem like they're coming from the West Coast. And so I think we're a great place to be. And if they don't land in Denton County, we like them to land next door in Tarrant, Dallas, or Collin County. But we're going to be aggressive. We're going to find ways to work with companies to help them land here, because the Commissioner's Court and in Denton County, they want to make sure they're adding jobs and adding opportunities to the residents that are deciding to live in the county.
All right, that's you got a very exciting county. You don't really think about Denton County reaching that far south and going into that many things. So that's pretty exciting. Dave, how about you? What's your elevator pitch?
Since COVID broke out, the first thing I start off with is I'm here in the office and we're open for business. We're 11 miles from the core of DFW. As far as connectivity, we're a city that has 635, I-20, I-30. We have Highway 80. We have rail serve. Right now we're in the process of nearly completing about 3 million square feet. We probably have about 3 to 5 million in the wings here. So growth is going to be very strong long term. We're as far as if you want to be in the Metroplex but don't want to be in the core, we are seeing a lot of people kind of signing up for that and seeing that that's what that's on their box to punch. So we're here to be a long-term partner. And the other thing is that while I work for a pretty large city, you can get answers and you can talk with the people you work with. So we're not too big and we're not too small, but we like to think we're just the right size to get it done.
That's nice. Thank you very much. George, do you have anything to close us off with here in terms of what you're seeing, in the market and what you think are the hot topics for a wrap up?
I would just say DFW will continue to be strong for the next 5 to 10 years. I think that Denton, Kaufman, Mesquite, Fort Worth, Dallas will all be very busy. We're becoming a great industrial market, and it will continue to be for the next at least decade, probably 2 or more. Gentlemen are busy a long time.
Well, that might be a really good way to end 5 to 10 years of great industrial in all our counties. That's pretty good. And coming from a JLL guy who's got the international reach, that makes me feel good. So I'm glad that we're all here involved in this. So I don't have any further questions. I just want to thank everybody for being on today. All the people who are listening in, we thank you. And Real Estate Journals and Red News, we thank you very much. Thanks for putting this on.
Yeah, this was fantastic. Sorry about the tech issues. I mean, we try to test and retest and figure everything out, but sometimes just connections don't agree with us. So thank you all. This was a great event. Look forward to doing it again soon. Talk more industrial in Dallas. And we have more events coming up in your markets. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful, hope your Tuesday goes better than our Tech Tuesday did so far. See you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.